Welcome to the Thought Vault, where we learn to unlock our minds to live with more purpose and bold intention. I'm your host, Emily Vermillion. Take a deep breath and let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome to the Thought Vault. In today's episode, I have Lynn with me. She is a parent coach, so I know that this topic is going to be helpful for all of you listeners. She has a background in coaching moms and toddlers and just the whole relationship with kids. So I know this conversation is going to bring a lot to the table. And I want to give a moment for Lynn to introduce herself and share a bit about her expertise.
Hey, so I am Lynn, and as Emily said, I am a parent coach, and I'm also a child behavior consultant. So, I should also say that I'm wife to Michael and mama to two littles who are both under the age of 3, a boy and a girl. And so, I just really love serving parents, specifically in the online space. And in terms of, my background and how I got here, I was originally a behavior analyst and provided behavioral therapy to children and did a lot of parent training, a lot of parent training. And so I really just kind of took a turn here recently and really wanted to devote some time and attention to mamas virtually. And so here I am doing that.
I love that. And it's like me and you connected instantly because having 2 toddlers myself, it's just, I think in this phase of parenting, there's so much that you're having to learn yourself as being a new parent and like having this new human being trying to figure out themselves. It's just a lot. Toddlerhood is a lot. So I'm so glad that we had this conversation happening today because we could all use some tips and advice and support in this journey because we are trying to, hopefully all raise decent human beings in the end.
Right.
So it takes work. To jump into the topics, I wanted to start with you kind of helping us know and understand like the best practices for setting healthy boundaries for routines, especially when it comes to the environment that we're all having to adjust to right now, like having work schedules different and being all at home or not being able to go places. Like, what's the importance of establishing boundaries and routines, and what are your best tips for that?
Well, really the importance of it is that routines and boundaries just really help us be more successful. They help us be more on task. They're just going to help make our lives easier. And it's not only for us, but also it's for our kiddos too, because they really do thrive on routine and structure. And really, even though it may not seem that way, that's what they're really desiring. And it just helps them function in their day and helps them learn and helps them know what to expect. And so I think for us parents and moms, what's really important is for us to have that expectation that okay, these routines and this structure is really important and these boundaries are important. But we need to start small, especially if we haven't already established those things. And we need to, give ourselves a little bit of grace, which, we talk about that all the time, right? Like, okay, give ourselves grace, give ourselves grace,
Mm-hmm.
give ourselves grace. But what does that really mean? I mean, I think it's just being patient with ourselves, doing things slowly, making those slow changes and taking those baby steps. And so it may simply be you establishing and creating that routine for yourself, for your work. And then once that is established, then, incorporating other areas of your life. I think it's really easy for us to want to do everything all of the time, all at once.
Yes.
But really, we're not going to be successful that way. We're going to have burnout really quickly. And so let's just take one small area and start there.
Yes, I love that advice. I know for myself, being kind of a type A person, that was something I tried to establish right off the bat when I had my first child. Of course, there were growing pains. And yes, had to give myself a lot of grace and learn patience because I'm not inherently a patient person. So that was a big learning curve for me. But I love what you say about starting small. So for me, it was like, okay, I just needed to get a morning routine down and like have a normal morning routine and figure out what that new routine was. And because I was so used to just getting myself up and getting ready and starting my day. And now I had to incorporate getting him up and getting him ready and staying up all night and figuring out how to even get up in the morning, just all the things. And so it's important, I think, that yes, focus on an area, get that down pat, and then you can kind of move into establishing just like better routines all throughout your day. Because I know for myself, and I think part of the grace aspect too is like being able to adjust because some kids are going to need adjust. Like you can't just throw them into a square box. Like they're a person too that has needs and wants and things like that. So you kind of have to adjust around their personality. Have you seen that with helping moms?
Yeah, and I think specifically, with the younger years from, birth throughout toddlerhood and then even until, they're just a little bit older, life changes all the time. Like you
Hmm.
get set in one routine and
Yes.
then they're going to throw you a curveball and everything's going to change. And so
Yes.
it's really about just being flexible and like being
Uh-huh.
okay with that, like being okay with change, accepting that and being comfortable with it, even though it may be uncomfortable for a
Right.
period of time. And I mean, the first year of life with babies, I mean, that's constantly what you're doing. You're just
Hmm.
constantly adjusting, but it's having those foundations of your own routine, just little pockets throughout the day, whether that's, your morning routine and your prayer
Hmm.
time or your alone time or 15 minutes of stretching or exercise or whatever it is that you're
Right.
doing,
Exactly.
just having some sort of stability amidst all of the change. Even right now, like with the pandemic and everyone's work schedule being crazy and everyone's whole life being turned upside
Yeah.
down, like let's find those little pockets where we feel like we're structured and we're successful and then just build off of that.
Yeah, I love that. And one thing that I've tried to stick to in my mind too, like you said, kids are ever evolving and you're having to adjust to them. And then throw in what we're dealing with right now, specifically with the pandemic. I've tried to just not be so time regimented and it's more just about the flow. So like even if we've been up all night for some odd reason or didn't, whatever, it's just our day like flows the same way. So our kids kind of expect like, okay, we had breakfast, so now we're going to have school
Mhm.
time or so they just know the flow and it doesn't necessarily have to be like the same exact steps at the same exact time every day. Cause that I tried to do that at some point. I know because that's just my personality, but I was like, okay, I have to let this time frame blocking thing go because I
Mhm.
can't predict what time if a 30-minute period comes and goes, then I'd be all frazzled like, crap, I didn't do XYZ. And so it would like throw my whole day off. So I think adjusting and then maybe having more like rhythms to your day rather than
Right.
regimented things.
Yeah. Having those just set activities, but not necessarily controlled by time.
Yes.
Yeah, could be really helpful.
Exactly. And so that kind of goes into like managing expectations. So I would love for you to talk about this because as a parent, managing expectations is like the number one skill you need to have because you cannot predict things. You cannot control other people. You can only control yourself and how you react. We've all heard that. And so we have to learn to manage our expectations of ourselves, of our children, of our family life. So can you talk about managing expectations?
Yeah, so I always teach parents about the science of behavior and how our kiddos function and why they do what they do, just so that it makes sense. Because I truly believe that knowledge is power. And when we understand why our kids are doing something, or why this is happening, or why this strategy does or doesn't work, parenting is so much easier. And
Hmm.
we can align our expectations within our parenting. So the moment that you understand, like, okay, when my kiddo is totally off on sleep, he skipped his nap, or he didn't have a good night's sleep, when you have that understanding for that next day, you're going to be a bit more okay with some unwanted or inappropriate behavior because
Right.
you understand it. It makes sense, right? This
Hmm.
is to be expected. And so being able to handle and manage those behaviors is a heck of a lot easier instead of just feeling guilty and being like, what did I do wrong with my kid? Like, why is he acting this way? I'm the worst parent ever, because we do
Yes.
make those jumps.
Yes, we do. Yes.
And so I think it's just having that knowledge of why our children are functioning the way that they're functioning and why different things affect them the way that they do. Like once we understand that and we can have that knowledge in our mind, then it is so much easier for us to parent and to feel confident in our parenting. And so in terms of, expectations for ourselves and that guilt, I think it's, having that knowledge and just having the patience with our kiddos, but really with ourselves too, because we're a big piece of that puzzle. I think, looking internally at your own self of, okay, why did I respond to my kiddo in such a harsh way? Like that doesn't make
Mhm.
sense. I
Yeah.
did this last week with my toddler because I could not find my running watch
Mhm.
and I put it in the same place all of the time in my closet, high up on a shelf. And so I'm assuming that he somehow got it and somehow hid it, hoping it's not in the trash can. But I was really upset that my watch was gone. because I was
Mhm.
about to head out on a run. And so he did something that was inappropriate and definitely unwanted. And so I normally would have just responded calmly, neutrally, everything would have been fine. But in this moment, I responded a bit more harshly and I lost
Mhm.
it,
Yeah.
which I'm not proud of. But then at the same time, I gave myself space and I gave myself the grace. And I was like, okay, here's why I responded that way. It's
Mhm.
because I'm upset
Yeah.
internally about something else.
Exactly.
It has
Yeah.
nothing to do about what my kid just did. And so I think when we're aware of our own emotions and why we're responding the way we're responding, we can say, okay, like take a step back, evaluate the situation. Yes, I can respond differently,
Mhm.
next time,
Yeah.
but also kind of being okay in that moment with not being perfect. We're human too.
Yeah, that's so true. I find myself having to do that too because I'm trying to juggle so many things at home and wearing so many different hats and trying to do it all at all hours. And so if I'm frustrated in one area, it always bleeds into another. And so I've had to really understand that. And also speaking to that, I see myself when I react in a certain way, like then my kids start reacting in that same way. So everything's a learned thing. That has been something that's helped me like manage my expectations to, like you said, be more flexible because I want my kids to have that skill. I mean, I want them to be able to handle flexibility and when things don't go their way. And that kind of keeps me in check because I'm trying to like teach them by my actions. It's
Mhm.
always like, don't do what do what I say, not what I do type of thing. So I want to still try to embody what I do want them to do because they are such quick learners. Our brain is like, and you would definitely know more of the intricacies than I do about this, but I know that at this time in their life, like this is the most malleable your brain is. It's functioning at its highest capacity because you're learning so much. And so they learn everything. Like you think
Mhm.
they don't see you or they don't hear you, but they do. And I think that just helps me have that frame of mind and that helps me manage my expectations a little bit better because like you said, if we are more aware of our emotions and can understand that, we can relate to our children better in that sense too because we can kind of understand maybe what they're frustrated about, what's led them up to having their outburst. And so I would love to hear your thoughts or some tips for us as parents. Like what are some patterns or things maybe that we could look at or recognize that we can see our kids getting, I guess, like anxious or nervous or like upset. So, what are some ways that we could help mitigate their feelings of inflexibility or their anxiousness?
I always rely on praise, and it may not seem that it's connected in this, specific situation, but I think that when we provide behavior specific praise, so not just telling them good job, not just saying like cool, awesome, but saying,
Yeah.
I love how you chewed with your mouth closed, or I love how
Right.
you followed directions the first time, or I love how you tried to get dressed by yourself without my help. When we provide that behavior specific praise, we are not only shaping their behavior for the future because they're more likely to be independent or to do those things again, but we're specifically telling them that they did a good job. We're strengthening our relationship with them. They are learning all of that stuff, and so when they have that praise and they have that emotional connection with us, I mean, it only helps, right? And so
Yeah.
any stress or anxiety they may feel could be reduced just because of that positive interaction. Praise is always my first go-to with parents
Hmm.
because we don't do it enough. It takes more effort for us because we're just simply not used to it. But when you do it frequently and when you do it a lot and you get in the habit of it, it becomes so much easier. You find yourself praising your kiddo for anything and everything, and you
Hmm.
don't even realize, that it's rolling off your tongue. And of course, praise is so much better than just constantly reprimanding them or providing that negative attention. I think in terms of also, just helping them with that inflexibility is just providing those expectations up front if we
Hmm.
can. So, maybe there's a doctor's appointment or you got to go to the dentist or a different babysitter is coming over, whatever is different about your routine, letting them know, communicating
Yes.
to them about that.
Uh-huh.
I'm really big on that just because it helps give them some peace because they know what's to come, they know what is expected. I also really like providing reminders or using timers to signal when something is going to stop or when something is
Hmm.
going to start. If they're playing an activity and I say, okay, in 5 minutes, we've got to clean up because we've got to get in the car and go to the grocery store, setting that timer and then providing those reminders. Okay, you have 2 minutes left. All of that just helps that transition and makes life so much
Yes. Oh
easier.
my gosh, you are speaking my language because I think just out of trial and error, having two kids back to back, I kind of adopted that timer thing. And it works like a charm because exactly what you said, like as adults and as parents, we're in control, quote unquote, of the situation. Like we know what's to come with the day. We are controlling the environment. We're controlling where our kids are going and all that stuff. So think about if like you were a puppet and you had a puppet master in your day, like it would make you nervous not to know what's to come next. And so I think about that and I've always been an advocate of like it's kind of over explaining. Like my husband will get on me like, you don't have to keep saying that. I'm like, yes, I do. They need to know like X, Y, and Z is happening so that I don't have a lot of pushback because I recognized exactly what you said. If I give them the expectation and tell them what's to come, I have a lot less pushback because they're like, they already have it in their mind, like, okay, when this activity stops, this is what we're doing next. And I've probably like done it so much. It's so funny now because if I say, okay, guys, it's time for bed, and I like didn't set the timer or something, my kids will be like, you didn't set the timer. 5 more minutes, mom. 5 more minutes. Like they always make me set the timer, which is fine because honestly, it just makes the days go smoother. So the timer trick that is a huge takeaway from this conversation because guys, it works so well. And I would imagine even with older kids, just having that open line of communication of like, what are you doing today? What is your schedule like? And always being mindful of the plans that they have so that they feel like they're a part of the bigger picture. You're up to date with what they've got going on. And so if you're communicating about all the different intricacies of your schedule, everyone just feels more connected and understood and know what each one is having to walk through in that season or that for that week. And so I love what you said because it's so true. If we just tell them, this is what's coming, have the timer set. And then I love the converse. I keep saying love, but it's just, this is speaking to me because we all need the support, but, having the conversation about praising. So bringing attention to praising. And I found myself, I would lay my head down and be like, all I did is feel like I yelled all day long. Like I just yelled all day. I just told them no, 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 no. And I just consciously was thinking about that one night. And I was like, I have to balance the no and the correction with, you did that so well. That was such an awesome job. Thank you so much for cleaning. The response is like so much different when you are, just like you said, giving them praise for their behavior on things that they do well. And yeah, it takes practice because I'm not inherently like that. And I'm an introvert. So I don't even have to like talk all day and I'm fine. Like I don't have to utter a word, but like you can't do that with kids. You have to like
Right.
engage and interact and help teach them how to be a human being. So let's jump into a little bit. Like, what are your key tips for moms? Like, just dealing with our mindset daily. Like, what are the best things for us to do for ourselves to be in the right frame of mind to, I don't want to say deal with our kids, but it kind of is dealing with daily life and teaching and training and whatever words you want to use. But can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I love what you said about praise and how you feel sometimes like, okay, at the end of the day, I feel like all I did today was, yell and just clean up messes and just,
Yeah. All the
facilitate the
crummy stuff.
transition
Yeah.
throughout the day. And so I think, not only should we be praising our children, but I think we should also, in a sense, praise ourselves. And we don't do that very often.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
don't because we just focus on those feelings of guilt, those negative feelings because they're just there, they're present. It just
Mhm.
comes very quickly. But we forget that, hey, we did something really good today.
Yeah.
Even if it was, I prayed my child one time today, or I spent 5 intentional minutes with them. We are just not trained to recognize that in ourselves. And so I
Mhm.
think step
It's so
number one
true.
is training yourself to recognize that. So whether that's part of, your morning routine or your evening routine, before you go to bed, just taking the time to just think about, okay, what did I do good? And how
Mhm.
did that make me feel? And how did that change that situation with my child? And you could even do it in the moment. You're having lunch with your kiddo and you can just simply say, thank you so much for spending time with me at lunch. I love eating lunch with you. Kind of like you said, praising is difficult if you're not used to it.
Mhm.
So we have to practice it. And I think as parents who are not used to praising or hearing praise or speaking that sort of way, it's difficult for us to find behaviors for us to praise in our children. starting with just those okay, neutral behaviors. Hey, you're sitting with me. Hey, you're hanging out with me. Hey, you're just
Mhm.
right here. Like we're in the same room. Awesome. You know?
Yes,
And so
exactly.
it doesn't have to be this like overarching, oh my gosh, you did something absolutely wonderful today, but just starting small. But like I said, in the moment, kind of recognizing in that moment that you did something good and how that makes you
Mhm.
feel, how your child responds to that, and then what follows. Because if you are consistent with that, positive things are going to follow. And then you
Mhm.
naturally are just going to feel better too. But in terms of mindset and expectations and being a mama, I think it's really easy for us, like I said earlier, to evaluate the day or the picture as a whole, as like
Mhm.
one unit. We really need to break it in chunks, just like we do with our kids. So, morning or just even breakfast and getting
Mhm.
ready, that routine, we could break our day into so many different chunks. And I think we really need to. We talk about having that balance between work and life and mom life and personal life. What's easy for me and what I found to be really helpful, if I am able to break all of those up into chunks. So, to the best of my ability, when I'm with my kids, I'm with my kids.
Mhm.
Of course, I got to multitask, right? You got to make dinner, you got to make lunch, whatever.
Yep.
But when I'm working to the best of my ability, I'm focused and I'm at work. And so I think it's for us to really be successful as people who are doing all of these different things, it's best if we are able to break them up by chunks, and then we can evaluate those chunks and we can create small, tiny goals for ourselves if there's something that we want to improve,
Yeah.
whether that be the morning routine or we want to establish a snack routine, like having scheduled snack times instead of our kids just going into the
Yes,
pantry
exactly.
whenever.
Grabbing. Yeah.
So I think it's really just taking baby steps, doing small goals and having one at a time, and then evaluating to see how that's going and then modifying if needed.
Yeah, I love that. And I know for me, I've had to too, because I think being the planner type of person, I had all these ideals of like what I wanted my parenting life to be like and what I wanted to establish in my home and like quote unquote the legacy of our house and things like that are super valuable and important to me. Like our relationship to Christ and how do we infuse that into our kids and all this stuff. And I would put a lot of pressure on myself, like, oh my gosh, I didn't like read a Bible verse to them today. Like I should be doing things like this, and like I have all these expectations of myself. It goes back to that managing expectations. But I will say one thing, like if you're chunking out your day, like we talked about, and you're making certain little routines and you're getting focused on that. So like at breakfast time, I'll play worship music and we'll like say a prayer. Like, and that's part of building that routine and that structure. So it's like every breakfast time I know I'm going to like do a worship song with them and like say a prayer. So like, hey, I hit my little goal of like always mentioning God for the day. Cause the day just goes away. And like we are inherently as mothers, I would say we're such multitaskers. And so we can like do more than one thing at once. But I think it's very imperative that we are intentional. Like you said, if
Mhm.
I'm with my kids, I'm trying to like just solely focus on that and be present. And like I am notorious for doing a thousand things at once. Like if I'm sitting with my kids, I usually have like an ear pod in and I'm like listening to a course or listening to a audible book or trying to catch up on something that I want to like get in my brain. And so I really had to like practice like no, I don't have my earbud in when I'm with my kids. And then also to help me get more present, I would like focus on my kids like physical features and try to like memorize them because the time goes by so fast. And, like, I am terrible with, like, memory. Like, my husband can remember, like, the shirt I was wearing when we first met, like, crazy details. I don't have that memory, but I wish I did have it in some respects. I wanna make sure I remember, like, what were they like when they were 2 years
Mhm.
old, remembering all, like, their little voices and how small their hands and feet really were, and so a way that I try to get into that mindfulness set is I'll just, like, focus on their physical features, like, look at their hair and try to memorize, their little cheeks and because they just grow so fast, and that helps me, like, get into that mindset, like, I'm here right now enjoying this precious, sweet person that I love so much, and it just helps you be more grounded in that time that you're trying to use to focus on them. So, I think helping yourself do things that get you, yeah, present, and I would say that that's, like, super important to getting your mindset right because, yeah, when you're at work, you try to focus on that, and when you're doing your house stuff, you're trying to get those done and be productive. So I think it's all just about trying to be present in your day and not get lost in what is next? What is next? What is next? Because that just makes your day go by in a complete blur.
Mhm. It really does. And the
Yeah.
days go by fast, so
Yes,
fast.
they
I
do.
love that. I love that memorizing your kids' features. That's
Yeah.
really
I mean, they just grow so much each day. And so, it's important that we're just present and mindful and focused on trying to live out a structure that's serving the Lord and helping us be decent parents. And yes, giving ourselves grace. I think that's a theme that we all should adhere to. Give your children grace, give yourself grace. It matters. And I would love for you to give us some tips more specifically, like right now, like with the pandemic and stuff. What have you seen in your expertise? Like, what are some areas we should try to focus on to help our kids just handle this situation that we're in, like not being able to see everybody? And what are some tips you have around that?
Yeah, that one's hard because everyone's kind of handling things differently. Some
Yes.
people are really comfortable with going out
Uh
and,
huh.
playing with the neighbors. And some people, I talked to a family last week and their child hasn't seen or interacted with another child since last March. So that's almost an entire
Wow.
year.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, families are handling it really differently. And so,
Hmm.
really, first, what are you comfortable with? What are you doing? Of course, you're your own family, you're your own parent, no judgment there. You make your own decisions. Everyone operates differently, but I think it's getting outside is going to be really important because if your children are not socializing with others, assuming that they're home all the time, then they just need to get out. They need to get their
Hmm.
bodies out. They need to explore. And I think also just being intentional, like really intentional with your time with them and think about the specific skills that they may be missing on depending on
Yes.
what they are or are not doing.
Hmm.
So, we are comfortable with going to some stores every now and again.
Hmm.
Once the pandemic hit, I stopped taking the kiddos to the grocery store. It kind of happened naturally because I had my second and I wasn't taking two kids to the
Yeah,
grocery
no,
store.
no. After I had my second, I was like, I'm done taking kids. If I go to the grocery store, it's when I have my own time. I'm not taking two.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
When trips to the grocery store suddenly become like a treat
Hmm.
for you,
Hmm.
so your
Yes.
life is turned upside down.
Yes, that's right.
But so we're comfortable taking the kids every now and again to a store. And it was really fascinating to see the first time that we took our oldest to the store. He's almost 3. And so we took him to the store, and this was months and months and months having not taken him to the store.
Yeah.
And his reaction when he walked into that grocery store, I mean, I had never seen anything like it in my life, but he was just like,
Yeah.
like it was like he was in an amusement park. He was in a
Right.
candy store. He was
Yeah.
just so excited. I mean, he hadn't seen people. I mean, he saw neighbors, saw family, whatnot, and all of the stuff and all of the
Yeah. The
learning
interaction and
points.
watching the movement.
We just need to think about what our kids are missing out
Yes.
on. And, even with wearing masks,
Hmm.
children are not seeing those facial cues, those
Yep.
facial expressions that help them figure out what behaviors mean, what people mean
Hmm.
when they do certain things. Like that's really hard. We underestimate how important the face is. I think as parents, what can we do? Just interact with them and engage
Hmm.
with them and show that emotion and show that facial expression, teaching them, different things. And I think it's really communicating with them and verbalizing
Hmm.
with them that, oh, this means that I'm upset or I'm frustrated. My toddler's right now is really into emotions. And he's like, Mom, you were mad. And I was like, no, I wasn't mad. I said I
Hmm.
was frustrated or I was upset. And so kind of really
Yes.
having that teaching moment, that dialogue with them
Exactly.
could be really helpful.
I think that's just something that we kind of all need to be mindful of. Again, to use that word, but no matter what age your child is right now, you're all having to adjust in some form or fashion. And so, just like you said, being in tune to what they could be missing, especially if you have older kids, just like taking the time to talk to them and be like, what's going on? Like, how are you feeling? I think communication for me is just such a tenet of a healthy family. If you're
Mhm.
communicating well with each other, then a lot of other things are going to be easier to manage because you've established that routine of talking things through and being open about what's going on. So it helps everyone just kind of cope with their feelings and
Mhm.
adjust to their environment and the circumstance. Because right now, this isn't something we predicted, it's not something that we're used to. And so we're all having to make that adjustment. So I love what you said. It's important that we just try to be mindful of where the gaps are and try to fill those gaps in some way. I mean, we're not going to be perfect, and some days are just going to be crappy days and like you might give them screen time to let them enjoy the outside world. I mean, I don't know, but every day I think we just have to be present, be mindful, have those rhythms and those routines established because it just helps everyone mentally cope with what's going on. And hopefully, I really believe that we all are being given an opportunity right now to make values in our family that are important because I know even before this, some of us were totally overscheduled and overcommitted to things. And so now is the time where we can really get back and hone in on like what truly is important, what are the values we want our kids to understand about life. It doesn't always have to be about going and doing and all this stuff. The simple parts of life are special too. And I think we've all gotten a taste of that, maybe a little too much, but it's okay. And I think we're all like just figuring it out. I love this conversation today. Thank you so much for imparting your wisdom to us and helping us have some tips and action steps that we can take to make our day better. Let the audience know like where they can find you and all those good things.
Yeah, so I am the host of the Parenting Clubhouse podcast. So you can find me on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, all the good stuff. And then, of course, LauraLynnLapointe.com, where you can find how I can serve you if you are needing some help with behavior or just parenting in general. And then Instagram, my handle's Laura Lynn Lapointe. Same with Facebook.
Awesome. Okay, well, I would love to close this episode with a prayer and then we'll sign off. Thank you, Lord, for today. Thank you, God, for bringing Laura Lynn into this podcast today so we could talk and share the things that we face as parents. And we just pray, Lord, that this wisdom you've imparted to us today helps us, it motivates us, it gives us discernment and wisdom to use mindfully throughout our day with our children. And we just thank you for allowing this conversation to be a part of our day to day. So we just praise your name. In your name we pray. Amen. So with that, you guys just make sure to share this podcast episode, subscribe so you get notified when more episodes go live. Make sure to check out Laura Lynn's podcast. I'll have the link to her stuff in the show notes of this episode so you can find her. I wanted to remind you guys to jump into our Insiders Facebook group, The Bold Insiders. You can find that by going to boldpearls.com/insiders to get into our private Facebook group, where we just have a community of like-minded gals praying for each other, having extra trainings in there, our lives, prayer requests, just all kinds of things. It's a great inside group, and I want you guys to be a part of that. Also, don't forget about the new resource I created just for you guys called the Quick Start Guide for Living a Better, Bolder Life. You can find it by going to boldpearls.com/resources or click the link in the show notes. This guide is a step-by-step ebook for helping you improve life physically, mentally, and spiritually. And as a certified coach, I've basically condensed all of my personal tools into this guide for you. I give away my tricks and tools for coaching myself through life, and I know it'll be a help for you as well. So be sure to check that out. And until next time, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2. Go live with bold intention, everyone. Bye for now.